everybody, Eric here, and welcome to the first ever sixth episode of Breakfast of Champions podcast, the podcast dedicated to three things: coffee, games, and life. And I am joined by this beautiful man next to me in this really nice blue shirt. Aaron, hello, how are you? It's great to see you here today.
Yeah, I'm doing good today. Today was a decent day. I mean, we didn't have a monsoon again, so that was fun. It was actually dry today, so what more could you ask for a
Friday for you?
Yeah, it's so weird to do it on a Friday, man. I forgot what day it was. I mean, obviously you could tell. I was like, wait a minute, what day is it?
It's a super Saturday for me here, and you know why?
Why is that? Why is it a super Saturday for you?
We just finished a interview with our great friend Derek from Super Derek RPGs on YouTube. What a fun time that was, man. I'm super stoked to show everybody what we talked about. What do you think? What did you learn from this particular segment?
It was definitely really cool to talk to Derek, because having watched him on YouTube or Twitch, it was interesting to talk to somebody who has such a foothold in the content creation space, and me getting into RPGs now, it was really, really fun to pick his brain on some things and just to hear his thoughts overall on his love for the genre.
For sure. And I think he's kind of an authority on RPGs and JRPGs, and that's why we wanted to talk to him today and just kind of pick his brain on content creation, on this genre of JRPGs, and how he tries to get this kind of more mainstreamed than it is, because there's still plenty of people that don't know about this particular genre of games. There's still people. I mean, like you're a convert from playing platformers and Call of Duty and all that stuff, and I feel like that's would be considered more casual gaming to a point. But it was really great to hear his thoughts on just a number of different topics.
Yeah, it really was. It was, and it hopefully, in later shows we can bring them back, and see what's changed with them from now till then.
I got two words to say to that. You know what that is?
What's that?
Oh yeah, I totally agree. Well, let's head on over to our multiplayer segment, where of course we interviewed Super Derek. All right, our guest today is a YouTube/content creator and online personality who has accrued 6.1 million views on YouTube, almost 60,000 subs, face of great content such as the game collection, experience points, how to RPG, plus other reviews and discussions, and the voice behind hit points. In my opinion, someone who needs no introduction. Please welcome Super Derek to the program. How are you today, Super Derek?
Hey, thank you so much, Eric, for the warm invitation, and it's great to be on your show. It's been a little while since you and I got to chat, and
yes.
Well, thanks for having me on, man. I'm doing great. How about yourselves?
I'm going great. How about you, Aaron? Are you going okay? You're stoked to be here today, aren't you?
Yeah, I am, and you know me, Eric. I'm always having a Baja blast.
Oh, of course you are. Now, Derek, I am here. I am all kitted out in Super Derek gear today. I have the Hype Responsibly shirt on, one of your limited 50 shirts that you did a couple of months ago, and
very nice.
Super Derek Brewing Company presents Dr. Phoenix Down's Elixir of Mana Extract, the Super Derek mug. One of my favorites and one of my go-tos, man. So I'm kitted out and well prepared to have you on the show today.
Oh man, thank you so much for having me on. I did kit out myself a little bit today, as you might be able to see with my Eric Ladd Boundless album limited edition t-shirt that you sent along with the record. And
yes, of course. Yeah.
We are just
all here.
Look at that.
We're all fangirling over each other.
I tell you.
So for those that don't know, Super Derek is a great friend of mine, great friend of the show. And when we first started compiling guest ideas for the show, Super Derek was like guest number one to have, like, in the YouTube space, the content creator space. And we're really excited to pick your brain today about all things RPG games, JRPGs, and all that stuff. But Aaron, we've got a question lined up first and foremost. This is like a real groundbreaking one here. So what is it?
This one here, it's the one that all the viewers want to know, Derek. Baja Blast or coffee?
Oh, I've never had Baja Blast, but I've had lots of coffee.
Oh man, oh my soul.
The running joke is, for some reason, was it like episode 1 we started, Aaron was drinking Mountain Dew Baja Blast out of a coffee mug. Of course, I was drinking coffee, so now it's come down to Baja Blast or coffee, which is quite a weird matchup, isn't it?
I mean, what do you mean? I only did it on episode 1. I'm still doing it out of my Breakfast of Champions mug. No
gee, look at you! You got the swag. We all got the swag.
Wow.
So, Derek, what we want to do is we want to warm everybody up to you. Obviously, there may be some people watching or listening who don't know who you are, and we want to get into that space and we want to explore the kind of content that you create. But to set you up, what's your favorite game and what is your favorite console?
Oh my God. That's such a big question.
Isn't it?
Yeah, man. I can at least tell you my favorite console. Hang on. It used to be Super Nintendo. The thing is, it changes from day to day and how I feel. It's been a little while since I've reassessed this question. So now I'm like, wait a second. Is it still Super Nintendo or is it PlayStation 1?
Oh.
Because PlayStation 1 is fantastic. It brings the 2D, but it also has a little bit of like the particle effects that they couldn't do in the Super Nintendo era. Oh gosh, that's really tough. At the moment, I'll say I am leaning more toward PlayStation 1.
Oh.
And favorite game though, I gotta say,
Terranigma.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Interesting choice. I mean, I would have thought Earthbound, like knowing.
I mean,
knowing
that's
you.
what I
always
thought too.
neck and neck between those two. It's always neck and neck, and sometimes Grandia also, but it's usually between those two. And it's just a matter of, do I feel nostalgic for being a kid in the 90s more, or do I feel like, just a really solid action RPG kind of combat, because it's really, when you say favorite game, in my mind, I go straight toward favorite RPG. But what is, the RPG is such a wide, vast thing, right? So it's like, it just depends on what you're in the mood for.
Sure.
Right?
I totally understand. And I feel like the older I get, the more I just associate RPGs and JRPGs with gaming. I don't really do platforming games much anymore because honestly, if I'm playing a game, like right now, I'm like close to 20 hours into Xenoblade 3. When I think of gaming, I just think of these mega stories where it's like you kill God. Like that's essentially what it is. But yeah, so favorite game, favorite console, interesting choices there. Terranigma, I wouldn't have expected from you, but I got to say, I'm not totally surprised that you would say that.
I mean, it's solid. When's the last time you played Terranigma?
I have a reproduction cartridge, and I haven't played it yet. Because I just recently went and bought a bunch of SNES games. Aaron, you haven't played that one yet, have you? Do you know much about Terranigma?
So that actually takes me into, that's the first video I saw of Super Derek's was his review of Terranigma, and I was like, what is this game? I need to know what this game is, and I have yet to play it, but it is on the Steam Deck. So
yeah.
So it's there ready to go whenever.
Everything's on the Steam Deck if you try hard enough.
If I had the ability to suggest that you move it up a notch on your priority list, I think you would not be disappointed. It is the best action RPG on the Super Nintendo.
Interesting.
Definitely take your recommendation there, as I've hit recently I've gone through like an RPG phase, man. I finished Final Fantasy VII for the first time. What was it, last week? Yeah, thank you. Going through Crisis Core, and then I also started Xenogears. So
be careful though. The RPG, I mean, when you go on an RPG streak, they can be hard to break. I started one about 10 years ago.
Oh, God.
Look at you now.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly.
That's so good. So, I alluded to it at the top of the segment here that you've been doing YouTube stuff. You're a content creator. So you started YouTube back in, I'm just trying to look at your page now. So sort by date added oldest. So 9 years ago. So close to a 10-year journey. And it was all started with a review of Earthbound. So tell me, like,
begins with Earthbound.
It begins and ends with Earthbound. So your first video was Earthbound, or the first entry into your series, the game collection, and your 100th episode last summer, during the mother of all summers, was a re-review of Earthbound. So tell me about your approach to why you started your YouTube channel in the first place, and looking back, like, where was your mindset at that point? Like, what did you expect to get out of it?
Oh, geez. It's a kind of an interesting story, kind of a long story, but I guess the short way of putting the story is there was nothing on YouTube that I had left to watch. As far as I was considered, I was like, man, why aren't more people making videos that I enjoy on YouTube? Like, there was Pro Jared, there were the retrospectives made by GameFAQs.com, or not GameFAQs, GameTrailers.com. Yeah, those retrospectives.
Yes, I remember those.
I was like, man, this is the stuff. This is the best content out there. And I'm like, what would stop someone like me from making something like that? And I thought about it. I was like, well, I guess really the only real difference between me and, say, Pro Jared at the time was like that he's doing it. So I was like, well, all right, I'll try my hand at making a series of not RPG reviews at the time. I wanted to make a video series talking about collecting video games in general, which is why in my earliest videos I'm talking about the cost of buying the game at the time, which is kind of an interesting time capsule looking back at like, oh, you can still get Earthbound for $150 in this video.
If only.
Or right. So it's like, it's pretty interesting how that kind of started. But then it turns out that the games that I wanted to feature in my show about collecting video games, it was an RPG, and then an RPG, and then I did a Sega retrospective out of nowhere, and then I did an RPG, and then I did another RPG. And then after a while, I was like, it turns out I'm only actually talking about RPGs. Maybe I should have named my show slightly differently.
So, what did it have a different name? Oh, it's Super Derek.
It was the game collection, right? It was
okay.
The name of it was all about video game collecting, right? It was like, and that's why it deserves a spot in the game collection, right? It's making recommendations for you to collect, but it just kind of morphed into, it's actually just an RPG show now.
There's nothing wrong with that, and I think it's really great. There's people that maybe haven't approached RPGs like as much as somebody else. Like, I know, Aaron, you're only just starting to dip into that RPG realm now, and I feel like once you get into these like monolith stories, like there's no getting out of them, is there?
No. I know the thing I feel like I hate the most after finishing an RPG is that, like, that empty hole in your heart. Because you've fallen in love for these characters. You love the story, where it's going, and then when it's all over, it's like, well, now what? What do we do now? And you're like in this like weird, like, well, I don't feel like playing any other games. I just want to go back and play what I just experienced.
I know. I know that feeling.
It's hard to get that from like a platformer. Yeah, you can tell the story, but I don't know. An RPG, it just hits different.
It definitely does. And I think that's one of the reasons that, like, growing up, RPGs were such a blessing to have as like a thing to be involved in, or to be like interested in, like, because like you said, with a platformer and stuff, like, yeah, you once you finish it, you're like, okay, I've done that. But once you finish an RPG, it's like, man, I want to go play that again. I want to go try New Game Plus. I want to go see if I can get a different ending. I just, as a kid who had like 5 total games in my collection, I would replay Earthbound over and over and over again until I knew it, forwards and backwards, inside and out. Chrono Cross was another game that I just replayed ad nauseum because there was so much replay value, collecting different characters and stuff. It's like the replay value. Part of me wants to know how many hours I spent replaying Final Fantasy X. The other part of me does not. does not want to know that information at all.
How many times did you go through the ha 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 scene? Probably countless times. It was an influential scene, I'm sure.
It's not that bad.
It's fine, honestly.
Especially
I don't
in
mind
the context of the game, it makes a lot of sense.
It does, yeah. But it's obviously very
taken
heavily
out of context and memed up. Oh, it's understandably very grating on the nerves. But the whole thing, like, I feel like people tried to say this is what makes the voice acting of Final Fantasy X so bad. But then the truth of the matter is, like, if you listen to the Japanese voice actor, it's the same laugh.
Yep.
The voice actor is imitating the Japanese voice actor. It is supposed to be that way, and for a reason.
Yeah, for sure. And thematically, it makes sense. And there's a lot of thematics in role-playing games. And specifically, Derek, you and I have talked about this before, but this is something that Aaron's now getting to with playing Xenogears. There's a lot of different stories that are told in these games, and they're very heavy stories. Thematically, they're very heavy. What would you consider to be like one of the more interesting or influential RPG stories that you've played over the years? I mean, like you mentioned Grandy at the top of the segment here. Grandy's a really great story, and it's a game that totally took me by surprise. Like I played it on PSP, not expecting anything, and I totally fell in love with that world. And same thing with Earthbound and Chrono Trigger and Chrono Cross. Like I don't like Chrono Cross as much because it's got like a troubled fandom because it's got a split down the middle, but the story thematically is still very interesting. So what would you describe as like one of the more influential or interesting stories in JRPGs that you've played?
So I mean, we were just talking about Chrono Cross, and I am in the middle of reviewing Chrono Cross. I'm actually writing out the review, and it has really struck me this time through just kind of like what a somber game it is. It's extremely bittersweet, and it was probably my first game that really made me feel like feelings, you know, about the solemnness, the decisions of that, you know, that you make that impact the future and other people, and just the kind of butterfly effect and fate and predeterminism versus being able to self-determine, actually make an impact, or are we all just victims of fate and circumstance, right? It's that was the first one that really struck a chord with me, but that was also probably because I was much younger at the time, and sometimes the first thing that you see is the one that feels the deepest, right? But thematically, otherwise, like, gosh, I feel like that's the one that strikes the chord with me at the most at the moment. Yeah,
interesting. See, I would my jump is straight to Xenogears, and obviously don't want to spoil, I think, Aaron, because you've only just scratched the surface with it, but it's such like it's so funny the way the JRPGs are set up, because you start the game and it's like, oh, you're this guy bebopping around in this town, and there's some funny things. Then it's like there's this chain of fate, and you've got to kill God, and you've got to break that cycle. And it's like, it's really cool. And Xenogears is the game, I finished it 2 years ago, and I still think about it on a daily basis, like the philosophical implications of that game. It's one of the, I know it's an incomplete story, but it's one of the greatest stories that I've ever experienced in a game. And that's the power of JRPGs, man. It's just really cool. But Chrono Cross is still, again, it's still a great game in its own right, and it does have that butterfly effect thing where with different scenarios, which it warrants different playthroughs and stuff like that. I mean, it's just a really great experience to have, and that's obviously why we like JRPGs, and of course that's why we have you on the show today to chat about JRPGs. I guess, Aaron, in your experience, like you haven't really played many JRPGs yet, have you? It's just Final Fantasy VII or anything else?
So before like my giant run into my leap into JRPGs, my knowledge of them was Pokemon. That was it. Everything else was first-person shooters and Pokemon when I was a kid, and like playing Mario, and that was it. I was that kid who's like, I don't want to watch a visual novel. I want to go play the game. I don't want to read and play video games. Who wants to do that?
Yeah.
But now that I'm older and wiser, I started with Earthbound. That was the first leap into it. And after that, it was Final Fantasy VII. And a little bit like I started Super Mario RPG. I have that one started. That kind of got, thrown under the rug whenever I played Final Fantasy VII. And it's definitely it's different going to that style. Because when you're doing something where it's more like cut and dry, like, all right, here's what you're going to do. You're going to go do it. But like a JRPG gives you like, all right, well, here's your main story. Here's a choice you can make. And then you can do choice A, or you can do choice B, which could further lead you to choice C, then the choice D. And here you are. And I don't know. It's one of those things where it makes you think a lot more, and it's definitely something that I'm very glad that I'm getting into them. But yeah, my knowledge of JRPGs, man, was just Pokemon. Just give me Pokemon Red, Blue, Yellow. Yeah. I'm happy.
I can't blame you. Pokemon is a fantastic RPG entry point. It is, it is the largest and most popular JRPG series of all time, let alone and game franchise. Mm-hmm. So, it is a monolith at this point of incredible game design, but yeah, it's kind of funny how, because people kind of experience it so early on, it seems that it doesn't quite register to a lot of people that it is an RPG. Like the turn-based combat, they just accept it. They don't think of it like, oh yeah, this is a turn-based RPG. It's just it's a thing.
And that's exactly what happened to me, because I had a chance to play the Final Fantasy VII demo when I was a kid. Ooh. And it was like, all right, I'm tired of playing Pokemon. I'm going to go play something on my PlayStation. And I'm like, what is this game? Why? Yeah, good thing it's a demo. I don't want to waste money on that. I don't want to ask for that for Christmas. But it's like, I don't know. Now it's one of those like, man, I could have wished I was part of the hype then. You know what I mean? Like, obviously, there's still hype for it all now, especially with all the Final Fantasy remake stuff. So you have like, what was it? Intergrade is now on PC. They have the other part of that coming out in the fall with Crisis Core remake. So it's like the hype's back,
It's absolutely off the rails. It's crazy.
It's that leads me to a question that I have here that's kind of in the tank already, and I want to circle back to Pokemon and Mario RPG because it's kind of relevant to what you guys said. But is 2022 the year of the JRPG so far? I mean, look at all the releases that we've had, and I know that you've covered a lot of them, Derek, in your Hit Points podcast. But like Triangle Strategy, I've played that this year. Like to me, that's still my game of the year. Amazing. We've got Live Alive that came out a couple weeks ago. We got Xenoblade 3.
Oh my god.
There's still some like Tactics Ogre was announced.
Yeah. Reborn.
It's unbelievable. Like
we've also got a new Shin Megami Tensei coming out.
It's unbelievable. How great is this year for the JRPGs, man? It's insane.
It has been completely bonkers. I feel like, it's like the water hose of RPGs around 2020 for various reasons kind of just got kinked, right? And then there's this buildup of pressure in the backlog, and then all of a sudden the hose got straightened out and it's just water hose everywhere. Just of RPGs everywhere, all month, all year, every month, every week. And that doesn't even count a lot of the crazy indie news that we've been seeing lately with like Eiyuden Chronicle, the creators of Suikoden, getting together and making this incredible looking indie RPG. I mean, that's still a ways out yet, but there are so many other incredible games that are coming out and have been coming out. And I've been covering the RPG news for a while prior to Hit Point with the JRPG Weekly Update. And by comparison, it definitely seems like a huge influx of games coming out lately, and especially in tactical RPGs, strategy RPGs. I think 2022 has been definitely a phenomenal year for JRPGs in general, but most specifically for tactical and strategy RPGs, which are extremely niche by comparison, but it started off with when did the Three Houses come out? It kind of started around that time, and there was this wave of like, now we've got the new Mario Rabbids coming out, which is strategy RPG. There was the Triangle Strategy, as you said, Tactics Reborn, and there's a new IP that's being put out by Square Enix as well, and I can never remember the name of it, unfortunately, but it's isn't it the spiritual successor to Final Fantasy Tactics? Is that the one that you're talking about?
I think that's the one.
I think that might be, yeah.
I remember when they showed that, I was all geeked out about it, because Final Fantasy Tactics I've played when I was younger. So I was like, yes, finally, a tactics game. Like, let's go, So I'm with you. I can't think of the name, but I know the one you're talking about.
Yeah, it's kind of like a little bit real-timey. Looks so good.
There's a lot here, and it's a bit of a hot take, but I kind of feel like this particular year right now, a lot of people will look back as like a golden age of stuff, especially for the Switch. I mean, like even we mentioned earlier in the show, getting that Chrono Cross Radical Dreamers edition, nobody saw that coming, because there was rumors of a remake for a little while. Then it ended up being like a remaster with like where the game runs at like 5 frames, and that's a problem that a lot of people have expressed dissatisfaction with, of course. And they said that we're going to patch it, but I don't think they ever will. But like even seeing something like that with that Radical Dreamers add-on in the game, which was like a really rare like Satellaview game that was only in like Japanese or something like that.
For a very limited time, they broadcast it out over the Famicom internet, basically, and you downloaded it and you got to play it for a few weeks, and then it was just, it is vaporware in like every sense of the word. Like even in Japan, it's like they got to experience it for a short while when they downloaded it, but then something else came out and they could play that instead. It's really, really interesting just how ethereal that experience was back then, and how it hasn't, even now we have like the internet, right? Like widely available. Every console is now internet connected, but nobody's really doing something similar, at least not intentionally anymore, where you can like just get a free game for a while and then it's gone. Crazy, right?
It's interesting. Aaron, this is a good one for you. The what would you consider?
Oh yeah. So this was one, obviously you now know that I've just now taking my baby steps into RPGs, right?
Yeah.
So let's say, what would you consider somebody's first RPG? Like what would the first game they should check out be to get them introduced into RPGs, JRPGs?
Yeah, that's actually, I recently made a video talking about this, but I feel like it's highly, highly dependent upon the person. So one of the things that I always recommend, I guess, is, do you like Pokemon? Or have you tried Pokemon? I feel like that's the big one. Like we said, it is the most popular franchise in all of gaming. So if you can get a shoe in that way, then you can take the rabbit hole and maybe go down through, this is a tonal shift for sure, but Shin Megami Tensei, which has a similar demon collecting mechanic that you can, catch them all, but you can also fuse them together. It's definitely a bit more dark, but it has a similar monster trainer sort of battle system. Otherwise, you can find somebody who's maybe really into Mario, and you can say, hey, look at all of these various Mario RPGs that you have at your disposal. Super Mario RPG, Paper Mario, the Mario and Luigi sagas on like Game Boy Advance. Like there are so many Mario RPGs, and Mario is also like an incredibly famous and well-known intellectual property of Nintendo. So that's like another way to kind of get a foot in the door, right? Just sort of, yeah. And it also, like I said, depends heavily on what your interests are. And like if you are into maybe anime, maybe the Persona series would be a really great way to kind of get your foot in the door, kind of find various inroads that coincide with their interests. There was somebody who posted a comment on that video, and they're like, my interests are racing. And I'm like, you know what? There are, I looked it up. There are in fact some RPGs that are based on like racing, and like there are like you race around and you run into these random encounters, and it is in these one-off like these battles where you race somebody else on the NES. It is really weird.
Wow.
Is it? Do they call
And-
it a NASCAR PG?
Oh my god.
Oh, that would be incredible.
That's one of the best ones I've ever come up with.
That is a missed opportunity.
How many left turns does it take to kill God?
Oh my.
I gotta say, you mentioned the Mario stuff, and I've there's a game that I've been playing on Twitch just as a weekly game, of course, because I've bought all these Super Nintendo games, so why not turn them into something that we can do weekly? So Mario RPG, I've been playing a lot of, and I'm almost finished it. I've just got the final stretch to go to get the final star in the game. But to me, like that's aside from Pokemon, because I feel like when you're a kid, especially like our age group, the millennials, I feel like everybody played like Pokemon Red and Blue.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so funny because they don't, like you said, it's wrapped up in this Poke persona. You don't really think of it as a turn-based game because that's how it was. I mean, like you said, you just accepted it for what it was. But if you're going to venture out and try something, Mario RPGs is really like the writing is just on point. It's so funny. It's so quirky. And Aaron, I know you've been playing a lot of the Mario and Luigi games recently, but it's like, this is the blueprint for those games. And it basically humanizes characters like Bowser and stuff that otherwise just don't have this personality at all, other than like Steel Peach. You know, it's really quirky and really funny of all those guys teaming up. I love it.
The way they treat Bowser is absolutely hilarious. And even Mario, who doesn't have any speaking lines as a kind of lampoon of the silent protagonist, instead conveys everything through pantomime, which
so
is
funny.
Extremely it's extremely charming considering like what they could do on the SNES at the time. It's like that is some powerful animation.
That's great. I love it. So that leads us into a kind of two questions here. So I know you mentioned at the start of the show, why JRPGs? What made you get into them? But like, what's the thing that you would recommend to people? Like, let's just say they pick up JRPGs, and what makes them great? Why should people keep playing these monolith games? Is it the stories? Is it the music? Is it the graphics? Is it the combination of both? You know, what's your sticking point for this is why you should play JRPGs?
Oh man, well, I think that JRPGs have a whole lot to offer in ways that still to this day aren't really found anywhere else. There's the strategy involved in the combat systems, which engage just a whole different part of your brain. If you're not into turn-based RPGs, you probably won't get it. But I mean, if you know, you know. If you get into the turn-based mechanics and you really like being able to eke out a win by the skin of your teeth, and it has to do with what you've done here and as far as preparation and planning and all of that, having that come to fruition is such an endorphin rush, right? But then you also have these incredibly massive stories that I don't think, I mean, it's been a while since I've played beyond the RPG genre, but last I've seen, you can't really get that same level of storytelling really anywhere else. And I think that the best way I can describe it is like, it's takes such a long time because it invests that much time into, well, some of the preparation and the strategy and building up your characters, but also in building them up in a like character development sense and giving them time to grow and develop and have interactions with one another and developing their bonds with each other. When you're playing games generally that aren't RPGs, you're talking about a single person, right? Usually, maybe a second person who acts as maybe a mentor or maybe somebody that you're trying to rescue or something. But in especially Japanese RPGs, the dynamic shifts from just the single person, the super person, the Ubermensch, if you will, to being more about the group, the party, and it still instills a sense of of a tight-knit group that is just hard to find elsewhere. And it's just, I don't know, being able to see those interactions between characters develop and the way that they can interplay off of one another is still something entirely unique to that genre, I think.
Totally agree. And I think because of that tight-knit little group that you have, for me, there's always that emotional connection to the game. Like I'm in it as soon as they start tugging at my heartstrings. And like I mentioned, I've been playing Xenoblade 3. Great game, cool story. Very reminiscent of Xenogears, which I really like. But there's a scene at the end of chapter 4, and I'm not going to spoil anything, of course, but like at the end of chapter 4 or start of chapter 5, whatever it is. And it's like, it got me tugging at my heartstrings because of that emotional connection with the game. And it's like, oh God, they got me now. I'm really into it now. And I know, Aaron, you finished Earthbound not long ago. Like we've all finished Earthbound here, but like you finished it more recently. Like you were almost tearing up, weren't you? Like just like that journey.
Mm-hmm. It was the end of it. The end credits were rolling, and I was like, "That's like one. What a ride that was! You start to finish." But like the attachment I had with all of them, I'm like, "That's it." Like what? Like what do you mean? Like give me more. Give me more of this? Where's it at?
I know you just want to go on more adventures with Ness, Paula,
yes,
Pooh, and Jeff, but and it makes you take Paula home first, and it's like, oh man. And that is more closure than you normally get in a RPG. Like that's quite the epilogue, especially for the time. And it's just, it got me. It's the ending that really sold me on Earthbound at the end. Is like, all right, I'm hooked, because I was fully tearing up. Manliest of tears were falling that day. And
one tear was shed that day. And I tell you what, like. You guys all love Earthbound, and you guys know I've done the Boundless record, but the vinyl exclusive one, the vinyl exclusive track was Smiles and Tears.
Oh yeah.
Every time I hear that, like even when I was making it, I'm like, oh damn, like I'm actually welling up because it's so reminiscent of that experience that I had with that game. And I almost can't put a finger on what it is about Earthbound that just makes me really emotional. I don't know what it is. It's just this cute little happy-go-lucky facade, but there's just the greatest evil, and these kids triumph all over that. Like, and the way that the credits music rolls, and like it's just so perfectly just encapsulated in its own little world. I love it.
Yeah,
same.
And the music, I think, has to be a huge part of that.
Oh
sure.
yeah,
for sure.
You don't have good storytelling and music, then what else? What do you really have? Really which nothing. That kind of takes us a little bit into the next question here. So we know that you're a big fan of RPGs, but what's something that you dislike about RPGs or JRPGs? Like what's something that they, that it doesn't hit a certain note, or maybe you didn't like the way combat is or something, what would be a big thing that you dislike?
Man, when you surround yourself with RPGs for 10 years, and I'm counting the years prior to when I'm still just playing RPGs, prior to when I started my YouTube channel. When you do that, you do see some things crop up that just make you go, oh. And some of those things about RPGs sometimes are not the RPGs themselves, but the way that certain groups of fans around certain games kind of get to be. And I know that you can't really blame the RPGs themselves for that, but some fandoms, especially when you have any sort of presence on YouTube and you start to talk about them, people will crop up to make you regret talking about them. And that is probably the worst part about it is sometimes it's the mega fans who are the true believers out there that just take themselves way too seriously and the games way too seriously for what they are. It's like when you I will review this game made for 12-year-old boys in the 90s, and I might have some criticisms for it, and I will be flogged for it. That's just the nature of the beast. So that's probably my least favorite thing about RPGs is that specific thing. But I feel like that's less to do with the RPGs themselves and more to do with just how people are in general when you get really passionate about anything. So outside of that, uh, it's really hard to find an answer otherwise, to be totally honest.
Fair enough.
I guess, and that's why I've continued playing them ad nauseum, and I'm still not sick of them.
Yeah, look, I think it's important, to accept the genre as it is, because some games are presented with, oh, not this again. I think we talked about this.
Mascot characters are something that I could do with less of.
Oh, so you're saying you don't like Riku from Xenoblade?
Oh boy.
Wait, what's it? No,
just
Ricky.
All I'm saying is that when I did play a little bit of Xenoblade before I started my YouTube channel, before I had broadened my horizons, there was this little creature that joined my party, and I did end up stopping shortly thereafter.
No.
Well, I gotta say they certainly dumbed that down for Xenoblade 3, and I think we talked about this last week in our episode talking about the future of gaming and VR and how inherently that leads into like anime waifus and all that stuff. I feel like the thing that I really dislike about JRPGs, and this is just me, and I'm sure some of your listeners may be watching and think, oh, well, darn it, I love anime waifus. But I just feel like that particular trope, to me, it's just like, and they did this with Xenoblade 2. I feel like it kind of distracts from the story, personally, more so than mascots, because it's like, here's this picture of anime beauty that's obviously very well presented, in as some people may say, and it's just like, man, I just don't know about that. It's just not my speed.
Yeah. I also do get that way sometimes. Like sometimes it's funny to play it up as like, oh yeah, it's a meme. Who's your waifu? Okay, sure. But it's like, like you said, some people take it super serial.
Sure, yeah,
and and they really shouldn't. But yeah, I feel like some things do get a bit gratuitous, and that's not my jam either.
Fair enough.
But I don't think that's an RPG specific problem. It is prevalent in them for sure, but I think it's just sort of something that's leaked over from general otaku culture and into whether that be like Japanese RPGs or Galgun first person shooter. I guess that's not Japanese made though. I think that was made by an American, but I don't quote me on that. But games of that nature, Senran Kagura, I think is that's a fighting game. There's Akiba's Trip, which is something else. I don't think it's an RPG. I don't know. Maybe it is, but I don't think it's. I guess that's what I do. I just disassociate the problems from the RPG genre. I'd be like, oh yeah, that's just them thing. I love RPGs. That's just an ism from some other group.
So we had a question come in from one of our friends, John, who is a Super Derek fan from Scotland. And the reason why I asked him, do you have any questions for Derek, is because he actually came over and joined my little community of friends and stuff like that from watching one of our crossover videos at some point, Derek. And and he was he just wanted to say thanks for introducing us, thanks to a video that we did talking about JRPGs and stuff like that. But he actually sent in a video question for you, that I think you're really gonna like. So here it is.
Hello, fit like in Super Derek. My name's John. I'm from the YouTube channel Chicken Fillets, and boy, don't I have a thoughtful and thought-provoking question for you. You, sir, are a purveyor of the JRPG, but what if you actually got your own RPG? Now you might be thinking, eh? Well, let's break it down for you. Let's say I have the Chicken Fillets RPG. Let's break it into 3 sections. The combat. Is it going to be turn-based? Is it going to be free-flow action? Then we have the art style. So is it going to be pixel art? Is it going to be cel-shaded? Is it going to be super realistic? Thirdly, give us a brief synopsis on what the game's going to be like. So for example, Chicken Fillet RPG is where Captain Chicken Fillet has to take on the evil Emperor Pigeon. So that's my question to you. Tatty bye.
Oh man, I saw that and I was just I'm absolutely lost in that. So John's question is, what Super Derek RPG? Go.
All right. Oh, gosh, before I answer that, are we talking about an RPG about Super Derek or an RPG made by Super Derek?
Either or, I suppose.
Why not? Well, why not both?
Okay.
Why not?
Oh
both?
gosh.
Super Derek RPG by Super Derek,
would make
starring
for a-
Super
yeah.
Derek.
I would make for a super lame protagonist because all I'd be doing is playing video games, and so it'd just be a video game based on recursion. So instead, I'll instead say this is an RPG of my own design, okay, and this is actually one that I have been working on in the back of my head ever since I went to video game development school back in college. Believe
Really?
it or not.
I didn't know that.
It was a waste of a degree, but
Well, look at you now.
Exactly.
so this is a RPG that is a action RPG that takes place within a high school, and it is a 2D top-down action adventure / action RPG in which you play as a set of 4 high school students who are hanging out, just enjoying life at school as much as anybody ever did. And suddenly, zombies attack. And now our heroes are some of the only humans remaining because their full school is infested with zombies. It is up to you to try to go through your yearbook and cross off the zombies who have, or the students who've been turned to zombies by defeating them in combat or rescuing them if they survived, taking on various boss fights that occur within the larger areas of the school, such as like the gymnasium, or maybe a pool might have like a aquatic themed boss fight, or
Ooh.
maybe a theater might have something that's like drama themed. And of course, it'd be full of all kinds of high school stereotypes with like, super strong jocks, or like, super nerdy like zombie types with like glasses and stuff. Anyways, combat would take place in like a top-down action RPG style in which you could switch between 4 different characters, one of whom would be like mostly melee based, maybe using like a baseball bat. By the way, they're all using improv weapons that they found from across the school. So like the guy's best friend might use like a piece of a paper cutter that's been broken off of the paper cutter. So it's just like the blade end.
Oh, God.
That's clever.
And the science geek who would join your party would also be like, super into chemistry. So he'd maybe use some projectiles that he made, little handmade bombs, right? Made out of, or maybe acid that he would like throw acid vials and they'd splash and cause damage that way, and that would be the way that I would make my own RPG if I were to do so.
I'd play it.
Pixel art, by the way, pixel art.
I
For
couldn't,
sure.
I'd play it.
couldn't picture it any other way. And so, what system would it be playable on?
Mhm.
PS1
Probably-
or Super Nintendo?
The way I had initially envisioned it would be like Super Nintendo, so kind of like Zombies Ate My High School Students,
Yeah.
kind of vibes.
Okay.
I love that, man. I think that's really creative, and
Mhm.
it honestly, it sounds like something that hasn't been done before. It certainly would combine, like, as soon as you say baseball bat, and like as soon as Super Derek says baseball bat, I'm like, oh, Earthbound. But I love that because it's, a lot of JRPGs have these things where they call on other games, and like for the series that's probably most famous for that is the original Final Fantasy. Like that was a kind of a spawn off of the idea of Dragon Quest.
Yeah.
So like it's obviously taken that formula and then enhanced it from there, and very ironic
Yeah.
because Square and Squaresoft and NX combined, blah blah blah. So there you go. I love that.
Wouldn't it be so cool to make your way through that game and like see all the various cliques represented,
Oh,
save
God.
everybody that you could, or put them out of their misery if they did not survive, or
I like
Oh.
that. You should get that
and
made.
maybe
Mhm.
like unlocking different areas as you go, and maybe depending on the direction that you take, maybe you can save some students but not others, depending on if you go right or left first, or
Oh,
so
boy.
many opportunities.
Replay
boy.
value and moral choices.
Mhm.
Sounds like your kind
Now,
of game.
now, do you call the side quests homework, or do you?
Absolutely.
Oh.
I think we must.
Well, there you go.
I love, honestly, that's a great pitch, and you should. I feel like you as a creator, I feel like you have a little bit of pull. So surely you could send an email and say, "Here's my idea. Can we get this?"
I think I have far less pull than you think I do. Everybody who's ever wanted to design a video game has their pitch.
Yeah.
And that's the easy part, right? Making it is by far the hardest part. Most, like 90% of that's probably not even enough. Like it's probably more like 98% of all indie developments like just end up failing. So like they just never come to completion. Like it's the 2% that you ever even hear about that have gotten that far. So like actually seeing something to fruition, such long odds that nobody would want to risk that on some schmuck's pitch like mine.
Super Derek RPG. I don't know. Don't roll it out. I'd play it. I'd be in. If you did a Kickstarter or Indiegogo, I'd back the highest tier. Put it that way. That's what I would do, man. I like the idea.
That would be rad, though. I would love to see that come to fruition someday.
Before we move on to the next question, because I brought a prop here, I do want to say, speaking of Kickstarters and stuff, this is why it reminded me. The Boundless record that I did last year, I actually had Super Derek submit the artwork for Ness. So this was a sketch that you made for me for the record insert, which was really cool, and I thought that was really special, of course, because the whole Boundless thing actually came. Like I've wanted to do it forever, but you had an issue with YouTube grabbing your audio stuff in your first review of the first game of the Mother series. So I offered to do something for you or whatever, and then I was just like, I'll just do an album.
I'll just make the whole soundtrack of Earthbound just to help you out with your review.
Yeah, why not?
It's the least I could do for you.
Small album.
Hashtag just Eric Ladd things.
Honestly, that's literally once I'm in something, you can't get me out, and I just go. It's either whole ass or half ass, and I just go like more than anyway. There you go.
Oh boy. Well, with that, rolling into our next I'd say like talking point here. So you've been doing YouTube for a good bit here. You also stream. So what would you consider the most challenging thing about being a content creator?
Most challenging thing about being a content creator's gotta be developing a on-camera presence. At least that was the hardest part for me, at least getting started, was if you ever watched my original Earthbound review, you'll probably see that I was not really a well-spoken person. I'm still hesitate to say that I am. Very nervous, very hard to keep eye contact with camera lens, that was honestly, it's a skill that I just did not possess, but I kind of brute forced my way through until I eventually got somewhat better at it. And I hope that I'm still continuing to improve. Of course, now I'm being very hyper aware of everything I do and say because we're talking about it.
Mm-hmm.
But that and like the whole like teaching yourself how to be an editor when you've never gone to like, filmography school or whatever. There's a whole lot of skills that go into being a YouTuber that I just, just kind of YOLO'd myself into. I'm like, yeah, sure, I'll figure it out. We'll do this, whatever. Let's go. And then I guess that was the hard part back then. The hard part about it now is the way that YouTube is like ever changing and ever adapting to what YouTube wants from you. Like, oh, is it Let's Plays that are big on YouTube now? Is it shorts? Is it short content that people watch 100% of? It's like, what does it take to feed the YouTube algorithm today, and how is that different from yesterday? And just it's a that is the hard part, I guess, is just figuring out how to continue to maintain relevance as you continue to make what you hopefully continue to love to do.
Yeah, and I noticed late last year, you really started to bump up your video output to the point where you were doing like 2 a week, and that was I don't put it this way. I don't know a whole lot about YouTube. I have an idea for a video, throw it up. I have an idea for a retro game remix music video, throw it up. I don't really pay attention to what the YouTube machine wants. So I feel like at that point in time, you were kind of more in tune with that kind of level of output with 2 videos a week. Did you find that doing things consistently was better for growth, or did you find you just kind of burned out in the end?
Oh, 100% better for growth. Yeah, I was especially like discussion based videos. I felt really pulled in a huge number of people to the channel that hadn't ever seen my stuff before. Talking about like how to defeat your backlog, for instance, was one thing that just I've never gone viral before, but that's the closest thing that I've come to it, and that was really nice. But trying to come up with enough ideas to fill was kind of difficult. And then on top of that, I'm not a full-time content creator, so I've got a full-time job and a full-time wife. and so it's just those things that do cut into that. And also I stream whenever I play a video game. It's over on twitch.tv/SuperDerekRPGs every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 6 p.m. Central Time. But
love it.
But I've also taken a short break from that for a moment because I'm playing some games that are under embargo at the moment. But
oh, really? Okay.
Anyways, so yeah, it's a whole lot of things pulling me in a lot of different directions, and sometimes like I almost feel like if I could just go full time, then it wouldn't be a problem to maintain it. But when you do have that 8 hours a day plus dedicated to working for somebody else, and it's just exhausting.
I feel like in the times where I have been working full time, I feel more motivated than ever to finish at 5 or 5:30 and really just use the best of the few hours that I have in the evening to work on that dream job.
Yeah,
which obviously is creating content full time. And I feel like out of a lot of people that I've known that are on the cusp of doing that, I feel like Super Derek as a brand has always been on the cusp of that, purely because like the level of content that you put out has always been, as you say, very thoughtful and thought provoking. And I love that line that you say, hi, I'm Super Derek, thoughtful and thought provoking RPG. I love that because it's like you have this shtick, this on camera persona that you've come up with, and that's something that a lot of people struggle with when setting up their camera for the first time. Back in the days that I at least you and I started, it was probably a camera like a Sony Handycam with the flip out screen.
Oh, boy.
Do you know what I mean? Like that's how a lot of us started back in the day with iMovie or Windows Movie Maker. So it's hard.
I had a cell phone that recorded in 720p, which was really good for an Android phone.
Oh, nice. Boy. I love it. But there's so many challenges with streaming and YouTube as well. But I suppose like in terms of streaming, because I like you mentioned you stream as well. Twitch.tv/SuperDerekRPGs. What's an issue that you have with Twitch streaming? And I feel like this is something that I want to talk about in other episodes because I want to chat with other streamers. But like what's an issue that you yourself as a streamer you've found? Is it hard to grow an audience there? Do you feel like it's easier because you already have like a presence on YouTube? You just say, on my community page, hey, I'm streaming now. And then like everybody just comes over and then it grows from there. Like, how would you describe that?
I don't do that because I don't want to like annoy everybody on YouTube with my community posts. And I feel like YouTube doesn't push community posts like nearly quickly enough for that to matter. But having some form of presence on YouTube, it has far more discoverability. Like you can put out a video and it's discoverable 100% of the time, right? So, and if you happen to mention in that video that you have a Twitch channel that people can come hang out with you at, and throughout your schedule and stick to that schedule, then getting people to come join you over there is a far easier endeavor than convincing somebody who doesn't know you to find you on Twitch, because Twitch has next to no discoverability at all whatsoever. And I guess the other thing about being on Twitch is that it's really uncertain over there, I feel like, because it seems like every other week there's a scandal going on at Twitch that, there were hate raids. There was the DMCA's issues that was going on. There was hot tub streamers. Like they're just always like this aura of like what's going to happen on Twitch today. And how is that going to affect whether or not people feel like going to Twitch that day? You know, it's just, there was always that. It's weird that Amazon owns Twitch, but Twitch tries to skate by like they're still an underdog, right?
Yeah.
They still like to act like they're some kind of startup, but really they just have no excuses at this point for being as not, I don't know,
Maintained.
poorly optimized to compete with YouTube at this point. And now YouTube is about to start eating Twitch's lunch. I think it's got me at least looking at like, well, should I stream on YouTube instead? Should I stream on Twitch? I don't know. It used to be that I did stream on YouTube, but then I switched over to Twitch because people just weren't looking for live content on YouTube. They were looking for it on Twitch. That's if you wanted to watch somebody play games, you went to Twitch. And a lot of people on YouTube just were very much like, I want an asynchronous sort of interaction. I want to see highly produced content, and people still want to see that even in live content. But they want to see it highly produced, highly scripted, highly edited, you know, very tight, clean, you know, a short consumable piece of content that they can see and enjoy for a moment and then move on, right? But on Twitch, the cadence is different because like you're looking for someone to hang out with for a while, and it's very low key, and you get a bit more of a personal interaction with them. But at this point, YouTube has been really pushing for more live content lately, and they've been making it easier for people on Twitch to transition to YouTube. So I don't know. I'm still sticking with Twitch for now, but part of me wonders how long that will actually be.
So that's a good talking point.
It is, because what would you say would get you to move over to YouTube for live streaming?
I mean, I'm definitely already dipping my toes in with my with my podcast Hit Point.
Yes, of course.
with Baku-san JRPG, where we talk about anime news, niche news, JRPG news, and anything that interests either Baku or I. Basically, it's just a weeb news show, but
I love it.
But like I guess that what's different, I don't know. I still feel like I like the culture of Twitch's user base, as far as like everybody there is into live streaming. They're very much also into like, you know, supporting the content creator, you know, things like bits, subscriptions, and Twitch Prime subs. Like there's just a whole different aura of like people there want to support you in what you do, and they want to be a part of the community, and that is one way that they do that. I feel like, on the other hand, a lot of YouTube's community is different in that everything on YouTube has always been free, and that's just how they are used to enjoying their content is just by passively enjoying it, not really necessarily having to participate in chat or wanting to support the creator. I mean, YouTube has actually YouTube comments have had a long history of really being highly critical of their content creators, and I remember when Patreon was first coming out, like this thing, and people are like, "Oh, you want a Patreon account? You sell out."
Oh, I know, right? I remember that.
It was so
Toxic.
so bad when people started first putting ads on YouTube. People were super angry about it when people would start making money off of YouTube. You should just be making videos, high quality videos, that is, not just crappy content videos, but you should be making those for free.
Oh boy.
It should just be a hobby, you know, like so YouTube has this like undercurrent of just like extremely, like, whenever people are, I don't know, doing anything and it costs them or it inconveniences them even to sit through like an ad integration or something like that, people get really negative sometimes. And yeah, that just doesn't seem to be a thing on Twitch. People on Twitch are like, yeah, make that dollar. Gotta respect that hustle, right?
It's really funny, and I feel like the thing with the difference between YouTube live streaming and Twitch is, like, obviously, like I said, people go to Twitch and they expect to see game streaming, but now it's such a myriad of things between like hot tub streams and I don't even know. It's just visual
just
ASMR.
Chatting and IRL. Like, here's a live stream of somebody eating a burger at McDonald's.
Yeah,
it's crazy. Okay. It's absolutely crazy. But I feel like a lot of people still jump to Twitch because of that association to the brand of Twitch being that live streaming platform. And I feel like YouTube does need to do a better job, because like if I see somebody on my subscription panel live streaming on YouTube, I generally don't watch that because I sign into YouTube for those short bursts of content. So like it's really difficult to make that jump. But you are already doing that by streaming your podcast every week on your YouTube channel, youtube.com/c/Super Derek. That's the one if you want to watch the Hit Points podcast every week, which is a really great show. I do catch up on some episodes during the week.
My favorite part is the theme song.
Oh yeah, that's whoever made that he must be really good looking.
yeah, definitely agreed. Eric Ladd, you made an incredible ska punk cover of my intro to the game collection. So thank you so much for that. It has. I never cut it short. It gets me hyped up for the show every time. It's great.
Oh, I love it. I actually I watched the last Hit Points that you did on catch up, and of course you can see the YouTube chat displayed there. And there's always a comment like, "Oh, I'm just dancing around to this intro song." I'm like, "Great, it's done the job." I love that.
That's right.
It's awesome.
Getting the chat section when you dance to ska music. It's called skanking, by the way.
Oh.
Oh boy.
the more you know. Never would have thought.
Oh man. So with your podcast, what was the big like what was the driving force behind it? Were you like, you know what, I wanna do it on the things I love the most, and let's see what happens? Was that kind of the like part of the reason to start it, or were you like, you know what, there's nothing out there for this, and I feel like I can run away with the topics and everything?
Gosh, okay. So the whole concept behind Hit Point was I was extremely burned out because I had been putting through on a show called the JRPG Weekly Update, which had been getting some traction over time. It was pretty successful, but it was a lot of work to put one out every Monday, where I was doing everything from sourcing the news, trying to verify it, and presenting it, and trying to present it in a way that didn't suck, and providing gameplay, and it was highly edited, and it was a lot of work to do because I would start it at like the end of the week, and I would try to have it out by the morning, and it was a lot. And it would take an entire day to do. From like start to finish on like Sunday, I would work on it, and it was just not sustainable. So instead, I brought on Baku-san JRPG, who was a good friend of mine who I'd made through Twitch, and he and I instead can take turns bantering and discussing the news and kind of bouncing ideas off of one another, and kind of sharing the load. And it's not as like, just a short 10-minute consumable piece of content, but it is instead something that I think people can sit down and enjoy for a couple of hours. I didn't expect it to be a 2-hour-long episode every
You're killing it, man. It's
week,
great.
But that's what it's turned into, and it just kind of seems to hover around that mark. But,
and you're getting a lot of views on them as well, man. It's from what I can see as an outside viewer, it seems to be going off, which is really great.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's just like, I mean, Baku and I are good buddies, and it's just like I would talk about this kind of stuff with him anyway, so may as well flip on the camera and have some fun with it, right?
For sure.
Hell yeah.
Absolutely.
Hell yeah. The only other thing I would ask you, man, is what advice would you have for anyone starting out in content creating, or anyone who's thinking about making the jump to their first YouTube video or anything like that? What's your words of wisdom?
Oh man. Okay. I got some words of wisdom. The first is to start, because if you haven't started yet and you're thinking about starting, you may as well start. And because it's definitely uh it's definitely time based. It's the longer you're making content, the better you're going to get at making content. Don't focus super hard on quality right out of the bat, because uh, quantity here, practice, is what makes quality. So make more content, try to make it more sustainable. Keep that in mind. Don't, if you can find ways to make content consistently and entertaining and genuine, then I think those are the three main things that it'll take to really build up an audience and kind of get going. Because at this point, it's people I think are looking for people to be invested in, right? At least mentally, emotionally. I think people are looking for content that they can identify with. They'll watch your show for you, not necessarily because you are the best or the brightest or the smartest or the funniest. Like they'll watch you for you if they can find something about you that they like, I think. So so focus mainly on I guess not quantity necessarily, but like get good practice. Try to at least put out something once a week to really gain traction, and starting now is better than starting tomorrow.
I got to say the one talking point there, relatability. And that's one thing before you and I officially connected, I always would pop in and check out a Super Derek video, to the point that when we first started working together, I was a little bit starstruck. I was like, oh my gosh, that's Super Derek. The reason why is it's just, I feel like the content that you make is very relatable. I mean, I know you write scripts and stuff like that, and you do have like a teleprompter that you read off of, but it is just genuine, no BS thoughts. Everything's very well presented, and it is very thoughtful and thought provoking. And like that, like I said, that's your shtick, but you do it really well. But that's come through an evolution of figuring out your online persona and the kind of content that you want to create and the audience that you want to cater to. Like you don't shy away from JRPGs being this geeky or whatever thing, because like at this point now, like games are so widely accepted that it doesn't matter. But that's why I think a lot of people will, like, some new listeners today who don't know who you are, I hope they come away with, this Derek guy seems like a really nice guy. I think I'll go check out his YouTube videos, or I'll go check out his podcast, or the final thing that I have here, go check out your Super Derek shirts that you have in collaboration with Switch Wicked at switchwicked.com. I'm wearing the Hype Responsibly shirt right now. So if you want to support Derek, please go grab those shirts, because supporting small business and supporting Derek as well. So there's plenty of ways that you can support Derek and jump onto his bandwagon. It's really great.
Oh, thank you so much, man.
That's all good. Well, any final thoughts there, Aaron, for Derek today?
No, I think that's everything for me.
Very good. Any final things that you want to plug, Derek? Where can we find you? I know I've said it before, but where can we find you? What do you do during the weeks?
Oh my gosh. Okay. You can find me on the Twitters at Super Derek RPGs. Yes. I think. Let me double check that.
I'm pretty sure that's it, because I actually had to fill your name in for the overlay. Yeah, Super Derek RPGs.
Yes, Super Derek RPGs, because I want to make sure it wasn't Super Derek YT, because that used to be a thing I did. Okay, so Twitch, I'm at Super Derek RPGs, twitch.tv/Super Derek RPGs. That is youtube.com/Super Derek. And what else? You can also find me at superderekrpgs.com and shop.superderekrpgs.com for the best Hype Responsibly merchandise you can find.
Yep, I've got
Nailed it.
Just don't buy a counterfeit mug, because I actually did that.
Oh, you almost did, right?
I did. I actually purchased it. I bought it.
Oh, you sent the money? Did it arrive like that?
No, I canceled it. So okay. Quickly, the backstory is somebody posted a photo of a Super Derek mug on Twitter, and I was like, well, I like Super Derek. I'll go buy his mug. So I ordered this mug from this weird looking shop front, and
yeah, that's what happened. I think you saw it, and you're like, where can I get that mug? And some random person, like maybe a bot,
Yeah.
posted like, I think they automated it on Twitter.
no.
They took a picture of the mug and it was like slightly skewed. And then they took a rip of it and just put it onto another mug.
And I bought it. It was like a $30 or $40 mug. So then I had to email them. I was like, can I please cancel this order? This is counterfeit goods. Like I'd actually buy it from the person. Oh my gosh. I could, like, that's a real egg on the face moment. I feel like that was a real boomer moment for me, buying like knockoff Super Derek merch on Twitter.
I wonder how much money do you suppose that scammer makes on the daily with that bot? I bet it's more than zero.
What?
I don't know, man. People are silly. They'll bite at anything.
Oh man,
who knows? Well, anyway, thank you so much, Super Derek, for coming on the show. I really appreciate you taking the time. And like I said, when we thought of guests for the show today, or when we started anyway, Super Derek was very, very high on that list. So you were the first person to say yes, of course, in the YouTube space. So we're super stoked to have had you. Anybody listening, please go check out Super Derek. A really great guy, good friend of the show, good friend of mine. And we're just super excited to have had you. And we learned a lot. So thank you so much for tuning in. And we'll see you guys at another stage on the next episode of Sleep Breakfast of Champions.